This regular meeting of the Detroit Lake City Council is called to order. And at this time, I'd like to invite all of you to please join me and stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular city council, which was held on July 11th, 2017. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to make any changes to the minutes as they're printed? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular city council held July 11th, 2017. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda is before the council, and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to either add or remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as printed. Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. At this time, I'd like to invite the 82nd Northwest Water Carnival Co-Admirals Kate Spaeth and Dustin Hildebrand to come forth. They want to address the council. Welcome, good evening.
Hello, how's it going? Good. I just wanted to come and say the Water Carnival went really well this year. We want to say thank you to you guys and to the city for all your help and support.
Yeah, we appreciate everything you do and allow us to do throughout the week that makes it so successful.
Well, we appreciate all you guys do, and it's a great event, and thank you for all the hard work.
Yes, with that, we are bowing out.
Okay.
We're done. All right. So we'd like to introduce the 83rd Admirals,
Okay.
Andy Kastner and Natalie Blythe.
All right.
Thank you.
You got any words of wisdom for us?
Oh boy.
It's going to be epic.
Oh, yes. First of all, congratulations to Dusty and Kate. They did an awesome job. Everything was well attended and went very smoothly, which is what it's all about. We want to get people out to enjoy this stuff and have fun. So, but with that being said, we know it's also a lot of work and it extends far beyond 2 admirals and a group of JCs. So, that's all you guys and the city staff and the community and stuff like that. So we thank you for all the help and all the help going forward.
Thank you, and we look forward to next summer already.
I'm sure if you just ask past Admiral Bulkey, he'll give you all kinds of advice.
Do you have the band book yet for next year? Okay, we'll just check it.
Okay, thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Also, Karen Goskorsky and Patrick Hollister from the Partnership for Health would like to address the council. So, welcome Patrick and Karen.
Thank you. We were invited here by Bruce Imholt, and he attended the bike rodeo on the end of April, and he brought his grandchildren, and I think he was impressed by the bike rodeo. And he said, what I really like is for you to come and address the city council and just let us know, give us an update about all of the things that you're working on. And he said, not just the Detroit Lakes border, so you're going to see some of the work that we're doing all over the 4 counties. But to give you, for those of you who don't know, a little background on Partnership for Health is that we are legislatively mandated since 2008 to do the work of promoting health and throughout the whole state. SHIP is a program that's throughout the whole state. We work in the 4 counties here, Clay, Becker, Otter Tail, and Wilson counties. And we work in a lot of different settings, and the first handout that we left you shows not only do we do a bike rodeo in Detroit Lakes, but we also have worked in 9 other communities. And over the years that we've been doing bike rodeos, We really work with your community to host a bike rodeo. It's not just us. We couldn't do it without the support of lots of sponsors. But you'll notice that 4,200 people have been involved since 2011 in bike rodeos. And we have your illustrious, the picture that they have has Chief Todd in it. He said yes, we could use his picture. And a young man, Nathan Flaw, who was very excited, he was one of the winners of the bike rodeo this year. So thanks for having us here. Thanks for all of your support. It really takes a community to be able to do the work that we do, and you've allowed us to nudge you along the way to help make the healthy choice the easy choice. So we're going to talk about lots of different things that we're working on, and I'll turn it over to Patrick, who's going to start with some of our active living and active planning.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. I want to echo Karen and say thank you very much for inviting us to speak this evening. We'll make it brief. We know you have a jam-packed agenda this evening. So, next slide, please. So this is us. This is Partnership for Health. So this is the team that serves your 4-county area, Becker, Clay, Ottertail, and Wilkin counties. We're very proud to do so, and we work in a variety of areas as Karen described. Next slide. So I work primarily on biking and walking issues, so I'm involved in a lot of street projects around the 4-county area, including state trunk highways. So this is State Trunk Highway 78 running through Battle Lake. This is a photo that was taken in 2013. Notice that back then there were 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. Next slide, please. We did what's known as a road diet and a complete streets project. So we went from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. That gave us more room to make the sidewalks wider. And when we made the sidewalks wider, we also added bump outs at the intersections, and we added benches, planter boxes, bike racks, all kinds of cool stuff. And we made Battle Lake a lot better, downtown Battle Lake a lot better, and they've experienced a boom in tourism over the last 3 years as a result of this. Next slide, please. So we applied for and received 2 public art grants through Lake Region Arts Council based in Fergus Falls for Battle Lake. On the left there, we had a local Battle Lake mosaic artist, Annette Hochstein, supervised 130 volunteers to put together mosaics for benches and planter boxes, and it all turned out beautiful. And then on the right there, you can see we hired Elk River-based metal sculpture artist Sue Seeger to build us a 14-foot fish. So that is really cool. And what we did with that alley there, we pedestrianized that alley. Cars used to be able to go through that alley, and now they can't. It's only for pedestrians and bicycles and for people with chalk who want to chalk up the alley. And we even have a little box there on the left of the photo there for free chalk. So go down there and chalk up the alley. Next slide, please. Another thing that we work on is something called the Bicycle Friendly America program. So there's an organization called the League of American Bicyclists based in DC. The Minnesota chapter of that is known as the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. And they have 3 separate awards programs: Bicycle Friendly Community, Bicycle Friendly University, and Bicycle Friendly Business. And we helped Fergus Falls get the Bicycle Friendly Community Award at the bronze level. There are 5 levels: bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond. We helped Fergus Falls 2 years ago get Bicycle Friendly Community at the bronze level, so that's what that photo is about. Next slide, please. The Bicycle Friendly University category we've also been active in. Last fall, Concordia College in Moorhead got Bicycle Friendly University at the bronze level, and we were very involved in that. And so we had a celebration in April this year with a bike ride celebrating Concordia's new Bicycle Friendly University designation. Next slide, please. So I'm going to zoom in now on Becker County. We have been involved with the City of Frazee and MnDOT District 4 for the last 2 years regarding Highway 87. Highway 87 through Frazee was originally scheduled to be resurfaced in 2021, and we applied early this year for a Transportation Alternatives Grant, a TA grant, in hopes that if we got that grant, we would be able to upgrade that resurfacing project on Highway 87 to a full reconstruction and complete streets project. And our key objective with that was to put a trail segment along Highway 87 through Frazee, which may ultimately end up being either a segment of the Heartland Trail or at least a spur from the Heartland Trail. Alas, we learned in April or May this year that we did not get that grant, but fortunately, MnDOT District 4 was willing to postpone that street project until 2022 to give us one more year to take a shot at that grant. And so we do intend to apply for that grant once again this fall. And I know that it's a competitive program, and I know the City of Detroit Lakes is also a frequent applicant for that grant. So tonight I am throwing down the gauntlet. Give us your best shot. Go ahead and throw whatever application together you want to, and may the best application win. And I should also say, I'm not as partisan as I sound there. We're very interested in also helping Detroit Lakes with whatever application they submit. Next, please. So these are just two photos. We had some dignitaries from MnDOT District 4 and Minnesota Department of Health come and visit us last summer to talk about that Highway 87 project, and so those are just two photos from their visit. Next slide, please. We are very involved and very supportive of the Heartland Trail, and because we work in both Becker County and Clay County, we support the Heartland Trail through its entire length, through all of its cities, and we have tried where possible to help and assist in the process of building out the Heartland Trail. I put this slide together simply to remind everyone that Partnership for Health did fund a study for how to connect the Heartland Trail, Detroit Mountain, and Mountain View. That study was conducted about 18 months ago. Guy Fisher at Becker County has a copy of that study, and we're hoping that eventually the City of Detroit Lakes, Detroit Mountain, Mountain View, and Becker County will have the money and the focus to implement that plan. Next slide, please.
So one of the things you should know is that because we are the only state in the United States that has this kind of a preventative health program, we are one of the few states that our obesity rate has decreased. We like to take credit for that, but we work in all kinds of places. So we do worksite wellness, and all of the work that we do is to impact obesity or tobacco use. So worksite wellness, this is hard to see, but we listed all of the businesses that we work with on worksite wellness in Detroit Lakes. So 21 out of our 60 worksite partners are here, and we work on healthy foods, physical activity, breastfeeding support, and tobacco cessation. And the picture is from Lake Shirts, and it's their cafeteria, which they provide lots of healthy options in their cafeteria. Next slide, please. We have partnered with Becker County Energize. They began in 2016 with Essentia Health, Sanford, Becker County Public Health, and Partnership for Health as the leading organizations, and you can see what our goal is there, is to create a healthier community. One of the things that we've been really involved in is providing trainings for teachers and anybody that works with youth around trauma. Trauma-sensitive training is very important. We've done a lot of research around ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences, which we have discovered that if kids have any of those adverse childhood experiences, they're likely, for instance, many of us may have 0, but anybody 6 or more adverse childhood experiences, they'll live 20 years less than those of us who have had 0 childhood adverse experiences. So we've been working locally with those trainings, and we'll have trained after next week. We'll have trained, I would say, probably 80 professionals that work with youth. Next slide, please. School districts. There are 19 school districts, well, there are actually 20 school districts in the 4 counties. We work with 19. One of them we don't work with because they're part of our tribal work, and so we have other professionals that know how to work and know culturally how to work with Native Americans. So they're working with the one school district that is in Becker County, Pine Point. Otherwise, we're working with the 19 other school districts. Detroit Lake School District has a robust wellness committee. Christy Jopru is doing an active classroom break right there, and she is the wellness chair right now of that committee. They meet 4 times a week, and they make annual goals impacting the health of students and staff, and we help guide that process. And we've also helped upgrade their policies to meet USDA guidelines and just best practices on how to get kids moving and eating healthy throughout the school day. Next slide, please. And we gave the Detroit Lake School District a bike fleet. And these are some of the comments the kids said. This is Rob Flint leading the kids in PE. This was a number of years ago, and so they've incorporated it. In fact, Detroit Lake School District is one of the best that incorporates it in grades 4 through 8. These are the comments. This was the best PE day ever. You'd think that everybody, when they get to 4th grade, knows how to ride a bike. You'd be surprised at how many kids don't. And then these are quotes that Rob gave us, and he's a PE teacher. I got asked this question every day by 5 or 6 4th graders. Are we riding bikes today? When I said no, weather is not cooperative, I would get, man, I didn't know riding bike would be that fun. Can we do this next year? So anyway, these are great quotes from the kids. Our whole purpose is to get people moving and to get kids doing it safely and actively. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons when Bruce invited us to come to the City Council, one of the reasons we waited until now is because we've been working on this local walkability pilot study. And the purpose is to increase the capacity of businesses to encourage walkability in downtown corridors and increase physical activity. And it's a 2-pronged process. And one is that we assess the sidewalk and walking environment, and that's what some of the maps are. And I'll have Patrick explain it better, but we recruited these 6 businesses to work alongside us, and they're creating individual action plans and jointly a downtown walking maps. They're going to be called Walk, Work, and Play, and they'll be area focused. So like if you could just walk to the post office instead of getting your car and drive to the post office, those kinds of things. So it's been an exciting study. We did the same pilot study in Fergus Falls, and to see an increase in walking as an outcome has been great in that community. So we're hoping for the same here, and we've got great partners. And Patrick will explain the process that we've used to assess the sidewalk and walking environment.
Thank you, Karen. Next slide, please. So as part of the walkability project that Karen just described, we borrowed from MnDOT's central office in St. Paul a device called a Trimble, which looks like a giant yellow calculator. And we had our Minnesota Green Corps member, Austin Hoff. Some of you may have seen him walking your streets in that area shown on that map over the summer, taking measurements. He was using the device, it's a GPS device, to enter data on 2 issues. One is the physical condition of your sidewalks, and the second one is the degree of ADA compliance of your curb ramps at your intersections. I chose that area in consultation with Brad Green for Austin to collect all that data. And over the course of the summer, he collected that data for that entire area, and that represents a lot of hours of work. I know it's hard to see at the scale that it's at, but both the conditions of the sidewalks and the curb ramps are rated on a scale of 1 to 4, and you all have a handout of this. We have the base data for this. There are a lot of questions that Austin had to answer into the device in order to come up with that simple score. That score is really sort of just a crude summary of all of the data that he had to input. We have all that data in spreadsheet form. We've already received a request from Becker County for this data, and we're very happy to share this data with anyone who's curious, be it the city of Detroit Lakes, Becker County, or MnDOT District 4, or anyone else. Next slide, please. So this is the same map, just superimposed on an aerial photo. And I'm sure that between the GIS people that the city uses and the GIS people that Becker County uses, you're certainly capable of making more usable maps than what we're presenting here tonight. But again, the data is available for you. I will be sharing it with Brad. I'll be sharing it with Becker County and MnDOT District 4 also. And then, next slide, please. So finally, I just want to end on one note, which is that one of the things that we passed out, do you have a copy of that book? Yeah. So one of the things that we passed out at your place this evening is this. This is the Minnesota Food Access Planning Guide produced by the Minnesota Food Charter. And the reason that I passed this out is because I know that the city of Detroit Lakes is about to embark on a comprehensive planning process to update your comprehensive plan. And many cities across the state of Minnesota are including food access issues and addressing food access issues in their comprehensive plan process. Basically, a lot of communities are stepping forward and saying, as part of our comprehensive plan, we want to talk about how we can provide our residents with better and easier access to healthy food. So there are a lot of very interesting things in this book, and I'd be happy to talk to you at some future date about the contents of this book if you're curious. Thank you very much.
Couple more things is that we just recently found out that we were asked to give Manna Foods a grant, and we were able to give them $5,000 towards the purchase of a produce cooler. And we're coming up to the end of our fiscal year, and I shouldn't say that too loudly because Brad will say, I know what I want to spend some money on. But anyway, so we did happen to have those funds available that weren't allocated yet that we could give that, which has been holding up their opening, which right now is to be in late August. And then also, just to highlight too, we gave your city a grant to purchase 2 bikes, and I don't know if you're using them yet. Have you been using them? And what do you think?
They're awesome.
They're awesome. Okay, did you use them during Leaf Fest perchance? No?
We don't patrol those grounds.
Okay.
They're used on patrol already.
Great, great. Glad to hear it. So, any questions for us? We want to thank you again. Your city has just been a great partner in allowing us to come in and do a lot of different things to nudge active living along the way. So, any questions?
Any questions for Karen or Patrick? Well, thank you so much for your attendance tonight. We appreciate it, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to recognize our Public Utility Superintendent, Vernell Roberts. Vernell, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to recognize you. I've got a little certificate here that I'd like to read, and it says, Certificate of Appreciation to Vernell Roberts, the City of Detroit Lakes, ever conscious of its obligation to efficiently and resourcefully conduct the affairs of the City of Detroit Lakes, and recognition of the dedicated performance and commitment of Vernell Roberts. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Detroit Lakes expresses in this way gratitude and appreciation for the many hours devoted in the help of securing $17 million in grant funding for the wastewater treatment facility. Thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate it. At this time, I'm going to adjourn the regular council meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comments on the proposed improvement of curb, gutter, concrete approaches and sidewalks for 2017. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the issue of the improvement of the curb, gutter, concrete approaches and sidewalks for 2000? Yes, sir. If you could come up to the microphone, please, and we'd like to have your name and address for the minutes, if we could.
Okay. My name is Wayne Johnson. I live at 321 Elizabeth Street for the past 23 years or so. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak in this meeting. And this is in regards to the improvement of the curb, gutters, sidewalks, and such at various locations throughout the city. Specifically, the portion of the sidewalk in front of my property, it's basically a sidewalk that leads to nowhere. I'm old school phone yet, so I've got one. Those are photos of the sidewalk. It basically runs from 317, which is the orange house in the picture, to 321, which is my house. 3 lots, 150 feet total. And I've shoveled that sidewalk for 20-plus years, never really understanding why it was there, but as a resident, it's kind of our duty to keep the sidewalks clean, and I always did it to keep from getting charged from having somebody else do it. But literally, nobody uses that sidewalk. The only time that sidewalk got used was when my 3 kids, or the 2 neighbor kids, were learning to ride their bikes, and once they learned how to ride, they went to the other side of the street, or were old enough to cross the street, they'd go to the other side and ride with the other kids, because that sidewalk goes from corner to corner. The postmaster doesn't even use that sidewalk. Us neighbors, we've always just kind of taken turns and plowed a pathway through the yards from 317 to Scott at 319 to me down and such. And I just feel that repairing that small section of sidewalk is kind of a waste of the city's monies and mine. Why repair a sidewalk that the public doesn't use? My share of that's about $363, and for about half that cost, I would just as soon remove that sidewalk and plant grass there. Because there's like 6 squares in front of my lot. 4 of the squares need replacing. I've kind of numbered on the sheet there what squares, and they didn't even mark like the worst one, which is block 6. It's basically, there's trees along the boulevard, silver maple trees, and you know the roots on the silver maples, they grow fast, they heave up the sidewalk, and that's what's causing the heaving and cracking of the sidewalks. Now, unless we want to incur more costs and cut down those trees, which I vote no on, they're nice trees, everybody likes to have trees in their lots, it seems kind of futile to repair that sidewalk. In 3, 4, 5 years. It's going to heave up and bust it up, and we're going to be back at square one again. And then you got more cost to you and more cost to me. But so here's what I'm asking or proposing today that you guys would consider is, rather than repairing the problem that's going to repeat itself, allow me to remove that portion of the sidewalk, replacing it with grass. Then it's done. Keeping in mind there is a water shutoff valve right there, and a few years ago somebody came and cut a square out of that sidewalk and lifted it up for better access or whatever, so I wouldn't, be even having to work near that valve. By allowing me to remove this portion of the property, I'm getting a little older and I wouldn't have to shovel that portion anymore. B, we can leave the trees on the boulevard, which everybody agrees, hey, they're 25-year-old trees, we don't want to be cutting them down. And C, the city could use those funds elsewhere. And without removing those trees, I can just see the problem ongoing. So that's kind of where I stand with my trees. I just feel by allowing me to remove that portion of the sidewalk instead of repairing it will save us both money in the long run, a win-win situation. So please respectfully consider the options of letting me remove that portion of the sidewalk directly in front of my house to further avoid time and money being spent on a project that has no benefit to the city, me, or the public. Thanks for your
Okay,
consideration.
thank you. Can you come in to City Hall and talk with our city administrator, Kelsey Clemming, sitting right here,
Absolutely,
and maybe we can get this worked out?
absolutely.
Okay,
I
thank you.
appreciate that.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the issue of our curb gutter, concrete approaches, and sidewalk project? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion from the council.
So move it to order the improvements of curb gutter, concrete approaches, and sidewalks,
Okay, is there a
with the
second?
exception of the gentleman. that
Yeah,
just
we'll
spoke.
pull that one off, yeah. Second. Motion's been made and seconded to order the improvement of curb gutter, concrete approaches, and sidewalks for 2017. Discussion on the motion?
Mayor, I have a question.
Yep.
Brad, can that sidewalk continue further west?
On the south side of Elizabeth Street, and it does end, as Mr. Johnson said, I thought he'd probably be calling or coming in sooner and we would talk about it, because it was a case, the sidewalk's really bad. If he wanted to replace, we would. If that's the case, we'd have to then go three more yards to go all the way to Roosevelt to continue that sidewalk, and that'd be something we'd have to look at. Otherwise, In my opinion, I happen to agree with him. If we don't continue the sidewalk, there's no reason to have it in front of his house.
But you could continue
We
this.
could continue, there is a bank, I think one reason they quit, there's a bank, the next houses are kind of a bank going up. And I think that's why they had to put a retaining wall probably or something like that in there too, put a sidewalk through the last few lots.
Mayor, I'm not arguing to not have it looked at, but I know in our CDC committee yesterday, we talked about encouraging more sidewalks in our neighborhoods and, you know, so before we just take one out, I'd make sure we at least
There
look
is
at
a
that.
full sidewalk on the other side, on the
Yeah,
north side of
yeah,
our
the other side does go from corner to corner. And
North
again,
side of the street
technically,
does.
this isn't I've never seen anybody, why would you walk on that sidewalk, cross the street to walk on 3 lots of my
Sir, I'm not arguing that, but I'm just saying before we decide to take it out, we were looking at a policy of encouraging sidewalks in all neighborhoods. I'm just saying, let's look at that before we just make a decision to take this one out.
Yeah,
That's all.
why don't you come in and talk to Kelsey and we can get Brad involved and probably we'll have to come back to the council at some future meeting for a final decision, okay? All right? There's a motion on the table, further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We're gonna move right into the Community Development Committee agenda, and after that, without objection by the council, I wanna move to, after we do 5A, I wanna jump ahead and do 8A, because there's a number of folks here for that particular issue, so, Matt? Or who, no, I'm sorry. Ron.
Okay, item 5A is consideration to issue a rental registration to Laurel Carlson at 327 Elizabeth Street. To start with, I want to let the public know that we have received letters from former renters that have been in that property, so we know it's been a rental home prior to all this. And so with that being identified as a rental home, we have talked to our compliance officer, and she has looked at that, and she's come up with our rental sheet inspection list, and it has 9 items that have to be corrected in order to meet the city standards for rental property. And we did receive a letter from Laurel saying that she would be willing to fix these things by October 31st so she could keep her renter in that property. And as the committee, we've decided to, last month we said that we would give you until December 31st, so we still would give you until December 31st to take care of these 9 items. And if you go ahead and do that, we would be able to issue a rental property registration agreement contingent on that. But if it's not completed by December 31st, then your renter would have to move out. And Priscilla will be getting in touch with that list. Maybe he's giving the list already. And so with that, the committee has been on that, and the recommendation is, and I so move that we would go ahead and move forward with the rental registration agreement as long as this property meets those 9 items that have to be corrected in order to keep the renter in that property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to provide a rental registration to Laurel Carlson for 327 Elizabeth Street with the condition that 9 identified items must be corrected, and the date that need to be corrected by is December 31st, 2017. The discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Without objection, then, I'd like to move to... Without objection, I'd like to move to Public Safety Committee, item 8A. Chairman Vogt.
8A is the discussion on the T21. This started out as a little snowball going down a mountain that's turned into an avalanche. So I'm going to bring in somebody that is much smarter and wiser than myself, Mr. Ramstead.
See how smart I am if I can get the microphone.
This is City Attorney Charlie Ramstead, by the way.
Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit of context here, I guess, to start with. First of all, the action item that's before you in 8A is a relatively narrow issue. In other words, we're not necessarily deciding on what we're going to do tonight. The state statutes say that prior to making any change in the licensing ordinances relative to tobacco, the council needs to provide a 30-day notice to all licensees. And so the action item, if there is action taken tonight, is a decision about whether you want to authorize or direct the city to provide that notice to the licensees. You could do that by Friday, and it would still be possible for there to be action taken then at the September meeting, which is on September 12th. So that's the only action item that would be necessarily before you. But also in the packet that you've been given is a variety of different information. As you're all well aware, and as we can see from the audience today, there are a number of people who have strong feelings either way as to what we are or should do. I want to start this by just noting that, you know, the city of Detroit Lakes currently does have a tobacco licensing ordinance. It's relatively rudimentary, it's relatively simple. Essentially what it says is that persons who want to be able to sell products, tobacco products, need to obtain a license from the city, and they need to comply with all of the provisions of state law, and they need to pay our licensing fee. In other words, we don't have an ordinance section that regulates the distribution of tobacco products or electronic delivery devices or those items that is beyond the provisions of what's already provided for in state law. So if you look at what has been provided to you by both the proponents and the opponents of the change, both of them have provided us with suggested changes to our existing ordinances, which would not only continue the licensing regime for tobacco distribution, tobacco-related distribution, but would extend that to a licensing regime for electronic cigarettes or electronic distribution devices, and would also have a number of other enhancements to what's already provided for in state law. State law does allow cities to pass more restrictive ordinances relative to tobacco products and to the e-cigarettes, if we want to call it that, than what the state law provides. So we have the opportunity to pass more restrictive regulations in the state law, not perhaps the obligation. I'm going to give a little credit to my law clerk. There is an analysis you were provided, I believe. Pat Bakken did that. He's got some comments, and he tried to put some context in the proponents' versions of what they would like to see. And I'm not going to go through that specifically tonight. Maybe some of the people in the audience will. But Pat did a little analysis, and I would actually look at that. I would note that the opponents to this change, I'm not sure that's a correct characterization, have also proposed an alternative ordinance. You should look at that. And then, just to muddy the waters a little bit, the city clerk and I have also prepared what would be or could be a proposed change. And I want to emphasize that, you know, this is a recommendation that I am making to the council. I'm not saying that it has to be this way. There are certainly countervailing policy issues, but we thought in order to get things a little bit off-center, it would probably be a good idea for staff to go through the various proposals and make a recommendation. The recommended ordinance is up on the screen. And I say recommended, I mean recommended primarily by me, and I'll pin Kelsey in on this a little bit as well, because he and I have gone back and forth on this up until about 3 o'clock this afternoon. I think that we have copies of that out for the audience. And again, this is not necessarily the be-all and end-all of anything. You could make policy changes and substitutions to this to depending upon what the members of the public want to do. I'm just going to go through this a little briefly because there's a couple of highlights. Essentially what we tried to do here is stick to the regulation of the licensees. Okay? In other words, we don't go beyond, this is not a regulation where we're regulating the use or possession of tobacco or e-cigarettes. We are specifically regulating or proposing to regulate only the sale or the distribution by sale of these products. We are including the electronic delivery devices, the vaping devices, if you will, or e-cigarettes, into the same licensing regime that we would have relative to cigarettes, or relative to tobacco products. Last month, we discussed whether we wanted to make some changes to the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. Some of the proponents had requested that we adopt some provisions which would enhance the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. We declined to do most of that. That was partially based upon a discussion from the council at last month's meeting. But what we did do is that we did extend the Minnesota Clean Indoor Act provisions, the existing Clean Indoor Act provisions, to the use of the electronic delivery devices, e-cigarettes, that type of thing. So in other words, in this recommended ordinance, what you would have is those e-delivery devices, e-cigarettes, being regulated under the Clean Indoor Air Act the same way that tobacco products are. You can't smoke inside of a building, you can't vape inside of a building. You can smoke outside of a building, you can vape outside of a building. Okay? Same essential restrictions. And if you look at that, just going through the provisions of the ordinance, that is, and I don't want to go around too much, but that's essentially 60706B, smoking and sampling provisions. And I'll just highlight a little bit on that because when I talk sampling, the one exception that we propose in there is for sampling of products. Now that's I think, a controversial subject. And so normally under the Minnesota Clean Indoor Act, you cannot use tobacco products inside of a building. However, if you are a tobacco shop, meaning 90% of your revenues are generated from tobacco sales, there is a provision in state law which would allow you to provide sampling pursuant to some guidelines that are under federal regulation, which primarily talk about not free distribution. And what we did in this provision is extended that same provision to the vaping or the vape shops or the e-cigarette delivery devices. In other words, essentially the same regulations under the FDA regulations relative to use of those products or sampling of those products indoors as an exception to the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. That's the only alteration that we've made in this recommended ordinance to the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. The other things I would point out, and these came up at committee a couple of times at night, last night. Throughout this ordinance, you'll see the use of age 21. We're not presuming that you are going to agree to extend these provisions so that you would restrict it to T21. When this was first presented to us, I think the assumption was that all we were talking about doing here was raising the age by which you could sell tobacco products to persons of 21 and over. And the truth of the matter is there's a whole lot of regulation in here that could be adopted even if you just kept it to the age of majority, to the age of 18. So whether you decide as a policy question to extend it up to T21 is a minor change to this recommended ordinance. Okay? We have, as I mentioned earlier, if you go onto the sampling provisions and some of the definitions, scroll up a little bit on there, will you, Stacy? Okay. There was a discussion last night about what was allowable under federal law as far as sampling. So we added into this definition that whatever sort of sampling is allowed for tobacco products or e-delivery devices has to be done so in compliance with the federal law as well as all state and local ordinances. In other words, we don't spell those out in here. We just say that the vendors are obligated to comply, the licensees are obligated to comply with federal law. There was some discussion about what constituted a smoking lounge. We had a little discussion about whether sitting down meant that if you are in a smoking lounge. One of the owners, I think, of the vape shop or whatever, suggested that that wasn't correct because customers needed to be able to sit down in order to configure their devices or whatever. And so the proposed definition we have for a smoking lounge is simply extending the prohibition against a smoking lounge both for tobacco and vapor products and hookahs, which is like a water pipe, I believe, but other than for the purpose of sampling. In other words, if they meet the definition of sampling under the federal law, then they're allowed to do that. If they don't, then they're not. From other standpoint, from highlighting, again, I want to emphasize that this is just a restriction on the licensees being able to sell the product. It does not extend beyond our licensees. We're not making a general regulation for tobacco use products within the city. We do have one sort of proximity regulation relative to where these shops can be located. That would, of course, not affect currently existing shops. They would be, if you want to have it grandfathered in. That's in 606 at the end, 60703 at the end, it's an M. And basically what we do there is we don't have any proximity regulation about other commercial enterprises that would sell these products, but we do continue the regulation relative to proximity to youth-oriented facilities, and we define youth-oriented facilities essentially as to a facility that would be used to sell, rent, accommodate, offer services, offer products to sale to persons if 25% of the persons using that facility are under age 21. And that's just in a way to try to have some objective criteria about where that proximity regulation would be. And then one final thing that I want to point out, just in sort of not overdoing it and talking too much, which maybe I've done already, is in 60705. And this is the basis for denial of license. And this, to me, is an example of one of the complexities associated with the consideration of extending the age to 21. If you look at the top, 60705A, number 1, and it says the applicant is under age 18. Okay, now that is the current status of the law. But I think there's a legitimate question, and that is the policy question. If you decide to raise the age by which a person can be sold tobacco products to 21, does it make sense to allow a person who is 18 to be able to be a license holder for distribution of products that they cannot buy? Because in order to be a license holder, they're going to have to procure that product someplace, presumably from a distributor, and that distributor then would be violating your ordinance, selling to a license holder who was not 21. So if you extrapolate from that, then my recommendation would be to raise if you decide to go to the 21, my recommendation then is that you also raise the age by which someone can be in business selling tobacco products or vape products to 21 to make that consistent. But that is sort of a unintended consequence perhaps of the whole policy debate. I'm available to answer any other questions about this recommended ordinance. We're also here to respond to or answer questions with regard to anything that the members of the public might bring up. And I'll keep it at that. If that's enough, unless anybody has any questions of me.
It was not my intention to open this up for public discussion this evening. This is the first time that the council as a whole has received this presentation and these proposed ordinance and ordinance changes. And I would prefer to have any further discussion at our next meeting, if the council so chooses to set a public hearing, and at that time, I'll open it up for whatever discussion is appropriate from the public as well. So, any discussion on the part of the council this evening, or is there anyone that would like to ask any questions of either Kelsey or Charlie? And also, at some point, I would entertain a motion to set a public hearing for our September meeting. So, any discussion on the council?
I guess my question, this says consideration of issuing a 30-day notice to all licensed tobacco retailers regarding amending the city's tobacco ordinance. That seems different in my head than setting a public hearing, or
Well,
is this one the same?
If we set a public hearing for our September meeting, we have to send out notices to all the folks in Detroit Lakes that currently ban tobacco products, and notify them of the public hearing, and we have to do that 30 days in advance of the meeting, and so we would have to send those notices out by this Friday. Is that correct, Yossi?
Correct.
And then they'd have an opportunity to come and speak as well.
If I
Go
could
ahead,
just
Charlie.
add to that part. That was part of the reason why we put this recommended ordinance out there, not because it's necessarily where we're going to end up, but if we're going to provide notice to these people, we wanted to give them some idea about what we were proposing.
Further discussion, Ron?
I've got a question, because there's a lot of information here, but if we keep the current smoking law at age 18, like it is right now, what else is in there that's gonna, what's the major effects of this ordinance change outside of the age 18? What's the biggest factor we're looking at here, Charlie?
I would say that the major change is extending that regulation to the e-cigarette devices, the vaping devices, on the same footing as what tobacco products are regulated by. For instance, in the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act, there's regulations of tobacco products that are much more extensive than the regulation that you see of vaping products. Okay? So what this does primarily, other than the 21, is extend, basically put e-cigarette devices, vaping devices on sort of equal footing with tobacco products.
Stays? Does it stay up?
Okay, all right.
Well, how complicated is it to change the tobacco to 21, but to keep the vaping where it is?
I think there was a proposal that we do that, and how complicated it would be. Well, it would add a few more words to the proposed ordinance, but it's certainly doable if that's something that the council feels that we should do.
I get one more question, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned under 60705 about the license. So I understand we can regulate the selling, but are we allowed to, is that a question, are we allowed to restrict the age of somebody applying for a license beyond the age of 18? Is that?
As far as the tobacco sale license, yes.
Is,
Because there is a provision in the state statutes that allow us to be more restrictive than what the state statute allows. Am I correct, Pat?
Yep.
Kelsey, you have something you want to add?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, the only thing I'd add to Bruce's question about having two different ages for our licensures would be our compliance checks. We would have to have two people of different age to go do our compliance checks. So we do compliance checks at 18 for vape shops and 21 for everyone else.
Yeah, I guess that was, so the point there was it not just complicates the ordinance, but it would also complicate the enforcement.
Ron?
Yes, my question is too, is how difficult would this be to enforce all of this? To tell, to make sure that kids are smoking now, not buying tobacco until they're 21, but they can smoke when they're 18. It kind of gets to be a lot of work that has to be done you know, to make sure everything's legal on this with this new ordinance. So how difficult is that gonna be with our police department and whoever's gonna be enforcing all this?
I think I can respond to that, and Kelsey can probably add in. As I said earlier, this is basically just a regulation on our licensed sellers. So from that end of the enforcement part, it isn't going to be a major change, because it just bumps the year up. We already have to do the compliance checks. Okay, now, as Bruce, if we had different ages, that would make the compliance checks more complicated. But other than that, it isn't really going to add any additional regulation in. And I will say that one of the things that we did do in this recommended ordinance that is not necessarily consistent with something what the proponents want, we intentionally eliminated the situation where we are trying to regulate use and possession. So for instance, under some of the proposals out here, we would have a situation where if someone were 19 and were smoking, well, they're legally entitled to possess and use, but where did they get that product? And we didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. We didn't want to have our law enforcement then have to make an inquiry with the person who's legally smoking, you know, about, well, yes, you're legally smoking, but where did you illegally obtain this product, right? And so we took that out of there in this recommended ordinance. In other words, it is just the sale by the licensees, okay? So we are not going to regulate or try to enforce a person who's 18, 19, 20. They can smoke, they can possess. And we are not, under this ordinance, going to have to take that next step to find out where they obtained their product.
Okay. Thank you,
So
Charlie.
if we voted and this was opposed tonight, this whole thing is
If you do not set the hearing, we cannot change the ordinance.
and then everything is,
Well, I mean, you've got a lot of members of the public out there. I'm not going to tell you what their views might be, but the precursor to changing our licensing ordinance is this 30-day notice in the hearing. And if you don't authorize us to provide that, then nothing's going to happen in September.
In addition to that, it's going to require 2 readings, correct?
Yes, it's first and second reading.
So it would be on our September meeting and then potentially on our October meeting. And from the time of the first reading to the second reading, the council can make additional changes in between those 2 readings. So I think the logical thing is, if the council wants to continue taking this matter up, is to set the hearing for September, and that'll give you all time to, you know, really look into and read all the changes and the proposals, and you'll be much more equipped to listen to the public at that point, in my opinion, and we can go from there. So, go ahead, Ron.
Well, I guess one of the questions I've had all along and the problems I had with it is that until we get this to be a statewide amendment, it's going to be pretty tough for us to have in our small city, because you don't have to go very far for anybody to buy cigarettes outside of our community. County 6 over to Sorrows, they're right there, up at 59, not too far, Frazee, whatever. So I guess until we get, I would feel better about it. We had a statewide amendment where everybody was doing it, then you'd have something to work with. But when you have just one small city, it's I just think I also have a problem with the veterans coming back, young kids serving our country and come back, and they've been packing again for 12 months, and they come back and we tell them they can't smoke until they can't buy cigarettes because they're 19 years old. I have some problems with that. That's why I go back. I wish it was we're following a statewide amendment where this isn't happening in every city across the state. And until that happens, I don't know how much I can support that. Although, and we've got 2 sides here, and it's 2 sides and everything. I'm not a smoker myself, but I mean, I have trouble looking at people's rights and what their rights are and stuff to take their rights away. And so that's one problem I have with this whole thing, is that it isn't a statewide amendment. Okay, so what are your wishes? Do you want to set a hearing for September? Is that the consensus, or further discussion?
I would make a motion to have a hearing in September because I think there's things in this proposed ordinance that would pull it more in line with vaping and tobacco. I think that it would be good to realign those and get it up to date. Do I agree with everything in the proposed ordinance? No, but I think it would be good to at least go down and update that as best we could.
So is that a motion?
That would, sure.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to set a public hearing for our September, is it September 10th? Well, September 12th council meeting, right here at 5 p.m. And we will notify all the tobacco vendors within the 30-day requirement. And at that time, I would certainly open it up to public discussion, and you're all welcome to come back in September. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all for coming. I'm sure we'll see you all again in September. Is there anyone else in the audience that has an item that they would like adjusted on the agenda? Anyone? Jeff, you got something? What number is that?
I'm not sure. 5B.
Why don't, if we could just take 2 minutes here till some of the folks exit. You and the chief and me. Stacy, you I've got a sweater, I've got a fan.
Well, I would just say that it's easier to close on than ask you to take my shirt off. You would not want that.
And I think we've had that discussion in the past. As soon as we get Mr. Moki back, we'll reconvene here.
I thought they were here for your award, Burnell. I thought they were here for your award.
That's what I thought.
No, I don't.
Well, they didn't say they weren't.
That's what I'm thinking.
Big deal. The big hoorah's over with, now they don't go.
My only comment, Burnell, is thanks for the plaque, but where's the check?
Yeah.
It's in the mail.
No, your check, you.
Okay, folks. I guess the next item that Jeff would like is the next item on the Community Development Committee. So Ron, if you would continue on.
Item
with
5B, consideration of resolution approving the variance application to exceed the impervious surfaces requirement and to allow less than 75-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark to accommodate an addition to a building and a deck and a greenhouse at 1462 East Shore Drive, Hanson Properties, also known as Fireside. The committee's reviewed this, the planning commission has approved it, and I recommend that we go ahead and approve this resolution.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the variance for Hanson Properties Fireside LLC at 1462 East Shore Drive. And on the resolution, there are 10 conditions, which I'm sure you're aware of, Jeff, right? Okay.
Those conditions will be in the minutes also.
Yep. Make sure they're there. Just out of curiosity, what's a greenhouse? Is it a new type of dining experience that?
Well,
we're seeing,
speaking
or-
for Cole, the concept is to get more farm to table. And so there'll be fresh herbs and some produce. And
So you call it a greenhouse because?
well, there will be a glass greenhouse, actually.
Oh,
A separate building.
okay. All right, I just had to ask that question, because I didn't
Sure.
know, so. We had a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Next item, 5C. Consideration to a resolution in a public hearing for September 12th, 2017 for the proposed vacation of a utility easement between lots 1 and 2 of Block 2 of the North Industrial Park. This is that piece of land by the pet care system out of Richwood Road. The committee's reviewed this, and I recommend approval. I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution setting a public hearing for September 12th for the proposed vacation of the utility easement between lots 1 and 2 of Block 2, the North Industrial Park. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Next item is 5D, consideration to the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 415, amending section 4 of the zoning ordinance relative to general district provisions. And Larry, do you want to kind of go over that a little bit?
Briefly, since we changed our zoning ordinance and changed R3A to R4 and R3 to RM, we have to also change it in our part of the zoning ordinance where it lists all of our districts. So we are doing some house cleaning there.
Okay.
Thank you. So it's basically, it's renaming the new names for the zoning districts, and the committees review this and recommend approval. I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance number 415, amending section 4 of the zoning ordinance relative to general district provisions. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, and the ordinance is adopted.
Okay, and that's all I have, Your Honor.
Good.
One item we were gonna mention there around about.
Yes, Bruce has an item to bring up.
August 24th at the Planning Commission at 6:30, we will be reviewing, it'll be a public information meeting, not a public hearing, but a public information meeting regarding our shoreland ordinance changes. So encourage any council people that want to come to that meeting, and obviously the public, we encourage that too.
And that's here at City Hall.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to the Public Works Committee. Chairman Sherman.
All right, item A, we had the people on the committee for the Ice Palace and Ice Harvest come in and discuss what their plans were for building an ice castle in town, and the Ice Harvest that's coming up, they're hoping in mid-December. Is that what they were hoping for? I wish they were here to discuss it because it's pretty exciting stuff, but I'm guessing they'll be here in the months to come. And so that was just for information only. We'll move
So,
on.
Jay, just in a nutshell, during the Super Bowl week, St. Paul is going to build this big ice castle on the state capitol grounds, and they're going to get all the ice from Detroit Lake, right?
That's correct.
And they're also going to build a smaller castle here in Detroit Lakes.
That's correct.
That's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Okay.
Absolutely. So hopefully there'll be some good nationwide exposure for our lovely little community. Yes. So, let's see here. Anybody else? Bruce, anything else to add to that? You've always got. All right, very
Well,
good.
they're going to take out between 24,000 to 30,000 blocks out of Detroit Lake, and that's a lot of blocks to take out, and a lot of semi-loads to head down to St. Paul with.
About 5 acres worth, was it?
And it's, each block weighs between 300 and 400 pounds. So it's a lot of ice coming out of there.
Bruce, is it going to lower the lake level or what?
Well, not compared to what they used to take out, millions of pounds.
Right.
Mayor, there's no truth to the rumor yesterday that they were commenting that you and I were around when they still were taking ice out for refrigeration. That's not true.
I'm glad you're sticking up for us.
There's 240 semi-loads that Fultz Trucking is going to be involved with hauling down to the St. Paul area. That's a lot of truckloads of ice.
Okay, all right, Gene.
Item B, we had a discussion regarding no parking on the Pelican River Road and Stone Creek Drive. It was just a discussion, no action was initiated at this point. We're going to take a look at our parking ordinance. Somewhere in the near future, we directed staff to take a look at that, and at this point, it looks like Ron's got something he'd like to say.
Well, I would, because I'm getting calls on this all the time, and it is apartment area behind the vocational school, and I went down this morning before I went to Rotary at 7 o'clock, and there were 18 cars down there, and it's virtually every night. And there's 9 cars parked on Pelican River Road and 9 on Stony Creek. So for these neighbors down there, and these houses are mainly senior houses. We used to call them duplexes, now they call them townhouses. But the people are just frustrated with it. It's like having a graduation party every night in the neighborhood. And I know we're going to have discussion about doing this, but the crazy thing is that there is parking in the lots down there for all these vehicles. But they choose to park there in the street because it's the closest way to get there from the door when they come out. And I just feel that, you know, these people have been waiting 2 years to get something done. Ben Weekly would be here tonight, but he's on vacation in Washington State. But I'm just saying, can we put down some no parking signs on the north side of the road until we get an ordinance to do something? Because it really does get old for these people. And I can, after how I've seen people who treated down there in these apartment houses, I could see why no one in Detroit Lakes would want to have an apartment house by them. Because if you had to live by this every day, you get to the point where you're just frustrated, and you wish you wouldn't have bought down there. And there's a lot of new homes down there, but it's the frustration, and it's constant every day, and there's no get up on it. And I just would like to ask this council tonight to allow us to put no parking signs on the side that's close to those buildings. Those people would have to park in those parking lots that's been provided for them, and maybe would even take some work from the owners of those apartment houses to put signs up and telling people to park in those lots, because the lots are sitting there vacant, but the cars are on the street. I'm just saying, just for the quality of life of these people to do. I mean, these people aren't living by Zorbas, they're living out in a residential neighborhood.
Okay. But we're not dropping this matter, we're just, no.
Well, the thing is,
deferring action on it tonight.
well, we've discussed it for 2 years and just keeps getting deferred. And I'm just saying, until we come up with an answer, what does it take to just put up signs on these 2 streets to get people to park where they should be parking? That's all I'm asking, to help this neighborhood out.
Yeah.
You know, as a council person, I want me to know exactly what people really think they need. I mean, is it 1 hour? You know, we've had permanent parking in, you know, small areas around town at times. We've had a little bit of 1 hour parking. I mean, what is it that people really want? And I don't fully understand what they want. You know, is it no parking all on Pelican River Road and Stone Creek Drive? Because that's an enormous stretch.
Well,
so I wonder if we could just get some ideas for what people are really feeling like the problem is, and I don't know. And I was one of those people that drove by and didn't see what was being discussed. So, you know, I think maybe having Brad or somebody visit with some of the residents out there, I don't know.
They were here a month ago, you know, kind of telling us what they felt about it and the frustration of it. And I don't know how much more we can ask them. They're just tired of having all the cars here all the time.
But I think last month, though, Ron, they were here to discuss the new apartment going up.
Yeah,
that is different from the parking.
No, and the reason they were concerned about the new one going up because of the problem they've had with the 2 that are down there right now, and they're just seeing the situation to multiply, and that's what the concern is.
Okay.
They're not parking inside the lot. That's the problem.
I do get Jamie's point, and maybe, Brad, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to some of these folks, because, you know, we should know if we're going to define, you know, from this block or 2 blocks or whatever we're going to do, we should really have an idea of what they want. So, and if you could bring that back to the Public Works next month, and then maybe we could take some action on it.
Very good. So item C, consideration.
Well, I get a follow-up question though. So are we not, I mean, I know we had some discussion about having an overall discussion about our parking policies. Are we not doing that now?
Well, would there be action needed for that? I guess in
No,
committee.
I'm not suggesting, I'm just not suggesting action. It just sounds like now we're going to do parking on this particular issue, which is fine. But I get the impression of the committee meeting that we were also encouraging staff to come back with an overall parking policy for the city. So
Well,
I agree. I think that we need to look at
We
it.
need that.
We're going to
we
look at
are still going to do that.
Yeah, we need that.
Okay.
All right.
If
Very good.
we can't just look at one neighborhood, I mean, so, yes, definitely, Bruce. So is there any action that we need to do, Mr. Clem, for taking a look at the current parking ordinance?
No, I think I got it.
Okay, very good. Okay, so item C, consideration to a resolution authorizing the mayor and city administrator to submit a grant application for the Minnesota Highway Freight Program for the Chris Street, Randolph Road, County Highway 54 project. We took a look at that. The Public Works Committee has had a chance to look at this, recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the city to submit a grant application for the Minnesota Highway Freight Program for the Chris Street, Randolph Road, County 54 project. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item D, consideration to approving the agreement with the Marshmallow Foundation for the operation of the city pound for the 2018 and 2019 years. Public Works Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the agreement with the Marshmallow Foundation for the operation of the city pound for the years 2018 and 2019. Discussion on the motion.
I guess I'm not real up to date on city pound agreements, but I'm assuming nothing's changed from our previous agreement we have.
Just a adjustment in price.
Okay.
The 3% adjustment.
Thank you.
Further discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item E, consideration to resolution accepting a bid from Felt Plumbing LP for the landing on Little Detroit. Bids were opened on July 21st at 10 a.m. and Felt was the low bidder. Public Works recommends approval, and I so move.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution accepting a bid from Felt Plumbing for the landing on Little Detroit. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item F, consideration to a resolution authorizing the preparation of a preliminary engineering report for street and utility improvements for Highland Estates. That's Bob Spillman's project. I don't know that he's quite there and ready to start this preliminary report, but at least we'll approve the resolution, and as soon as he is, then we'll be able to get the guys going on it. So Public Works recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the preparation of a preliminary engineering report for street and utility improvements for Highland Estates. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item G is consideration to a resolution authorizing the preparation of a preliminary engineering report for sanitary sewer improvements for Westlake Drive from County 6 to the Pelican River. Public Works recommends approval, and I so move.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the preparation of a preliminary engineering report for sanitary sewer improvements for Westlake Drive from County 6 to the Pelican River. Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, the question I have is, what does it cost the city to run a preliminary engineering report for this section? Because I think we did this some time ago, and it came back at that time that the neighbors didn't want one because of the cost at that time. I'm just wondering what this is going to cost John to go ahead and to do a study on that.
We're typically, I would say, because there's some past information there, I'm hoping we can dust off that old report, update it with some of the current options that are now options. We're probably looking at somewhere in the $3,000 to $4,000
Okay. Because this property, when this was done last time, the neighbors were the understanding that we were going to go ahead and the city was going to pay 100% of it. But when they found out that there was a share in it, then it didn't happen. So I just wanted to make sure that we're within the cost on this.
Okay. I don't believe we have a motion in a second yet. Someone will be kind enough to do so?
Yeah, we do actually. Barb seconded
Did
the
we?
motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries.
Item H, consideration to a request from the Boys and Girls Club of Detroit Lakes to waive the pavilion rental fee on Tuesday, the 19th of September. Public Works recommends approval, and I so move.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the request from the Boys and Girls Club of Detroit Lakes to waive the pavilion rental fee on Tuesday, September 19th, 2017. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item I, the city engineer's monthly project status report. We'll refer that over to Mr. Pratt.
All right, thank you.
Don't get too long-winded, we're on a roll here.
We're on a roll, we'll keep it short. Item 1, the frontage, Trunk Highway 10 frontage road improvements, really nothing to report there, still waiting for some action from MnDOT. Item 2, Westlake Drive reconstruction, multi-use trail. Most notable thing there in terms of progress is we're working with Pelican River Watershed District and submitting a grant application to Bowser that we would hopefully receive some grant funds to help cover some of the stormwater costs associated with that project. So that's what's happening there. Long Lake annexation, phase 4. We have a public input meeting on August 16th at 5:30. Be an open house type format with a brief presentation at 6 o'clock. I'd certainly encourage council and anyone else that's interested to attend. This isn't a hearing, this is just some further discussion with those folks as we start to get into the design for that project, which right now we're planning on building next summer. So, Longbridge Heights Phase 3, nothing to report, just waiting for grass to grow. Signal study, Highway 10, East Shore, Chris Street. We are actively working on that project with MnDOT right now on a series of grant applications, one which you authorized tonight. And I think there'll be a couple more that we're going to go after, and this is sort of a cooperative effort with MnDOT and the city to try to pursue some funds to help on our behalf, help pay for Randolph Road improvements that are going to be needed as a result of these signal changes, and also some costs or some grant funds to help cover the costs of some of the signal changes that are required at Chris Street. So more to come on that. Highway 59 sanitary sewer and water main project. Crews are working on that, getting infrastructure in the ground. We did have a bit of a change in terms of the lift station location. I'm not going to delve into that too deeply. The short of it is we are going to move the lift station further north. It was originally going to be placed down by the Willow Springs Road. Due to some subgrade conditions, we were not able to get that gravity sewer line across some wetland area. Moving the lift station north, which in and itself isn't a huge ordeal, but what that does is it takes Willow Springs out of the lift station service area that we had intended for that lift station. So we'll have to put in another lift station on highway in Willow Springs at such time we do that project. So.
And that's the only option?
That is the only option. Okay. We've exhausted all of the options. That is what we have to do.
Okay.
Ultimately, it takes out about $120,000 of assessment revenue that Willow Springs would have been helping pay for that lift station. The upside is we may have some savings in the actual lift station because where we're moving it to can actually get shorter, a little easier to install, so hopefully we offset some of that cost. Long Pine Estates project's getting close to substantial completion. I'm still hoping that we will pave that road yet this week. If not, it'll be early next week. Probably a couple more weeks of work on that project, and then that will be wrapped up. And the landing on Little Detroit, you approved that construction contract, and I would imagine Felt will be working on that in the coming 2 or 3 weeks. So.
Any questions for John on the report? Thank you, John. Anything else, Jay?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll move on. Anything on the Finance Committee? I believe it's all consented.
No, they're all consent.
And we'll move to the remaining items on the Public Safety Committee. Pat?
Public Safety, item 8B. Here again, I'd defer to the chief to keep it short. Is there anything you wish to bring up about the speeding on North Shore Drive, chief?
We've looked at it. I don't see it being a big problem.
Okay, thank you. Item 8C, the appointing Officer Dylan Jensen to the Detroit Lakes Police Department is recommended by the Police Civil Service Commission. Chief, I believe he's still going along with his testing and everything along those lines?
He'll be here on Thursday for his 3 contingency tests. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I believe that concludes the.
Do we need to take action on that, Kelsey?
On
And the officer?
Police officer.
It says consideration to appointing him as,
And his test approval.
so we should have a resolution appointing him?
just approve the recommendation.
Okay.
So I make a motion to approve the recommendation of Dylan Jensen.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the recommendation of the Police Civil Service Commission for appointing Officer Dylan Jensen. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And I think we're down to the liquor gambling control. Chairman Janey.
Item 9A is consideration of the request for a donation for the 3rd annual Detroit Lakes Road Fest on August 26, 2017. This is a Detroit Lakes JC's event. The committee did discuss this and felt that it just wasn't really in line with our other donations, so our recommendation is no action.
Okay. Anything further, Jamie? Brunel, would you just preface these 2 items of the Public Utilities Commission agenda, and then we'll have somebody make a motion. Madeline's not here this evening, so. The first one is for the bids for the wastewater treatment facility.
Yes, we're to the milestone we're asking approval to advertise for bids for a wastewater treatment facility. The schedule is included in the packet. If things go well, we will have begin advertisement the week of August 28th. The plans and specifications will be ready for the contractors to pick up, I believe it's September 4th. Bid opening on October 17th. We'll hold those bids for 90 days. If everything looks good, funding is put in place, we will make a recommendation to award bid on November 14th. We will have the contract signed by December 1st, notice to proceed January 8th, and hopefully start construction March or April of 18, depending upon spring conditions.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we advertise for the bids for the wastewater treatment facility.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the advertisement for bids for the wastewater treatment facility. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And then also, will you preface item B also?
Yes, the American Renewable Resource Agreement is an agreement between us and Missouri River to allow us to import the energy from our community solar garden onto our system without being in violation of the RES 1 contract.
I would entertain a motion and a second for approval.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the Member Renewable Resource Agreement with Missouri Basin Municipal Power Agency and the Western Minnesota Municipal Power Agency. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And we're down to the mayor's agenda items, and I want to just thank Vernell again for all his hard work, and I know he was down at the Capitol many times, and I think he was very key, instrumental in us getting this grant funding. I don't have a recommendation for the DLCC board for replacing Steve Daggett, who is retiring off the board. I would certainly be open to suggestions of the council, and Bruce and I have actually talked about having a council member serve on that board, and so if anyone in the council has any interest in that, I would definitely strongly consider that. I would like to reappoint Josh Hochgraber to the DLCC board, and I would entertain a motion to approve him for another term.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Josh to the DLCC board. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I do not, yes, I do have. I would like to recommend that Janine Schneider be appointed to replace the seat on the library board that was occupied by Mike Stearns. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Janine Schneider to the library board. Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And also, I would like to reappoint both Rick Kittleson and Linda Shell on the library board as their terms are up. And I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve Rick Kittleson and Linda Shell on the library board. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. And we're still trying to track down John Wood, if anybody's got his phone number. I've had a couple of,
I just sent it to you.
oh, did you? The third one now.
Third one came from Mary Haney.
Third one's the charm, right? Okay. So I will talk to John and I'll have a recommendation at the September meeting. Also, the term of Delray Chivers on the Police Civil Service Commission is up, and she's served her maximum amount of terms and is not eligible to be reappointed. If anyone has any suggestions for an appointment to the Police Civil Service Commission, please let me know. I did talk to Joyce Duffy this afternoon about serving another term on the HRA board, and we're going to have a little further discussion, and I'll have a recommendation coming up here either in September or October. A couple of announcements. The Detroit Lakes Fire Department Street Dance is Friday, August 11th on Westlake Drive at 7 p.m. The Long Lake 4, or Phase 4A open house, again, is August 16th here at City Hall. 5:30, or did you say 6 o'clock?
5:30 is the open house, 6 o'clock presentation.
Okay. 5:30, the open house starts, and then there's a presentation at 6 o'clock. Eric Berggren is retiring after 24 years of service with the Detroit Lakes Police Department, and all are invited to his retirement party on August 23rd at 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Detroit Lakes Police Department garage. Planning and zoning workshop for all council and planning commission members is scheduled for August 29th at 12 p.m. in the council chambers. Do we have to let you know if you're going to attend and you're on the council so we can declare that a meeting, or what?
We're gonna post it as a public.
Okay, you're gonna post it. The budget committee meeting schedule is printed on the agenda for you to read. Our next joint governance meeting will be October 3rd, and it's hosted by Becker County. And I think we've covered the agenda. Dan, do you have anything else to bring before the council?
I've got nothing.
Okay. Jamie? Matt?
I'd like to have you guys spend some time looking at the ordinance with the smoking and vaping and all that. I know there's been a lot of hours put in for pros and vaping side of it. Dan and I have listened to a lot of folks talk on it, which has been great. Please put some thought to that, and unfortunately I will not be present at the September meeting.
Okay. Do you, Charlie and Kelsey, if there are, thoughts or whatever about the ordinance, would you welcome emails from the council members as to suggestions or whatnot? Or?
Within the bounds of the open meeting law, yeah, sure. That's just fine.
That's what I was going to ask you. What are those bounds?
Those bounds say that you can
You'll
certainly...
find out August 29th, come to the meeting.
Okay.
Send only to me or Charlie, don't send to me and everyone else.
Yeah. Don't copy your fellow council persons. If you have a question or a suggestion for us, send them to Kelsey or I.
What if I wanted to get a Twitter account?
That's a longer discussion.
You got anything else done, Your Honor? Jay?
No, sir.
Mark?
Well, I wasn't joking there. August 29th, I really hope the council members come to that, because there's stuff about open meeting and some of the things that we've been going through the last couple of years, I think is important for council members, especially us older ones and newer ones. But also, I got a little challenge, Scott. The firemen are having their dance on August 11th, and I'm always wondering as to why we can't get more community members there. But at least one way, I've got one incentive to get some of the people here in this room, Scott. As you know, I won't be there, but I'm gonna ask you to keep track, and I'll buy one beer for you. If you look up anybody in this room that comes up that night, I'll buy them a beer. Now, if Bulky comes back for a second one, no dice. I'll buy a beer for everybody that shows up, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
I've been there, haven't I?
Yeah.
I've been there.
About 25 beers, me.
About supper?
Does anyone in the city staff have anything else for the council meeting tonight? If not, the meeting's adjourned.